Okay, all the way from Cuba, at least at one point in time. I told you about him all night long. Welcome, with, if you will, Bernard Navarro.
Good evening. Can you all hear me? I am the Cuban that you've been waiting to hear, and I was born in Havana, Cuba. My name is Bernard. My father was a U.S. citizen, Cuban descent, born in Philadelphia. He lived there till he was 20 years old. He decided then to go to Cuba to pursue opportunities in the hotel industry. 12 years later, he was close to fulfilling his life's dream. He had saved some money, he bought a lot, and construction began on what was to be the first fully air-conditioned hotel in the country. The hotel would open in 1954. Our family had a very good lifestyle. My two elder sisters, my younger brother, and myself, we each had our own private maid. We had a chauffeur at our disposal. We all went to private schools. We lived in the penthouse floor of the hotel. We had a great life. We were considered to be wealthy by most standards. But all of this would change on January 1st, 1959, when Castro took over the island. As time went on, things progressively got worse. Every night in Havana, 10 to 15 counter-revolutionaries were either killed or jailed. Desperate people started going to foreign embassies to try to seek asylum. Other desperate people put together makeshift boats and rafts and try to go over the ocean to get to Key West, Florida. Many of them would not make it. The government decreed the death penalty for anybody involved in any type of counter-revolutionary activity. They even went so far as to decree the death penalty for anybody who would do anything that would hurt the economy of the country. I remember many nights waking up hearing gunshot wounds. I would walk into the living room and I would see my paternal grandmother, my father, and my mother talking, and I had no idea what they were discussing. Later on, years later, I would find out that they were discussing whether we would leave Cuba for Spain or for the United States. They had come to the conclusion that the government was too entrenched, that it would be impossible to have a counter-revolution because all it took was for one person to talk to the government and everybody would either be jailed or killed. In May of 1960, my father told the family that we would be leaving for the United States in about a month for a 3-month vacation. June 22nd, we arrived in South Florida, and my father told us the bitter truth. He told us that Castro was a socialist Marxist, that it was just a question of time before all private enterprise was taken over by the government in Cuba. He told us that everything we had lost. It was difficult for me and my family, especially my mother. There was no more hired help, there was no more chauffeur. She had to start doing all the cooking and all the cleaning. We lived in a house that had no air conditioning. And in South Florida, it gets very hot and very humid. My father was able to get a job quickly as a night manager of a hotel, and several months later, he got promoted to the general manager's job. He kept reminding us when we sometimes would whine and complain, and he said, "You're lucky. You have your freedom. You're now in the United States." In May of 1961, Castro would reveal his true colors. In a speech that month, he abolished elections. He declared Cuba a socialist country. And he referred to the 1940 Constitution which existed, and I quote directly from his speech. "The 1940 Constitution is too old, it is too outdated, and it is no longer applicable to the movement. We will now put into effect a new socialist constitution. As we fast forward now to 2009 and what's happening today, there are some very eerie parallels to what happened in Cuba in the late 50s and early 60s and what's happening now. Back then, the media was very supportive of Castro and his aides. Even though the media was free and the government had not yet taken over, everybody was enamored by the new leader. Hardly anybody would say anything negative against him or any of his aides. Every speech, everything Castro did was on TV. If he had breakfast at the local diner, the TV cameras were there showing him eating eggs and bacon. It was absurd. Today's media, except for Fox News and talk radio and a couple of conservative writers, as all of you can probably agree, are totally in the tank for the new president. Every single day you see the president on TV. It's either signing legislature, making an announcement, holding a press conference, holding a quote-unquote fair town rally with representation on all sides. We're even informed when he has a date with his wife. The other parallel was, back then in Cuba, the government was taking over all private enterprise, labeling it for the good of the people and for the good of the government. Today, you have the US government here bailing out General Motors. Today, the White House forces the GM, the CEO of General Motors, to step down, and they hold 60% of General Motors. The government, President Barack Obama states in a press conference, he says, "We will be like the silent stockholders. We will not get involved in any of the major crucial decisions. After all, the board of directors is capable of handling those decisions." The one thing the president does not tell you is who appointed the board of directors. I think we all know the answer to that. Fidel Castro and his socialist Marxist regime took everything away from me and from my family. We had everything and we lost everything, literally overnight. Cuba lost private enterprise forever. Can something like this possibly happen in the United States? Absolutely. It's happening right now as we speak. So now I ask you, what can you do to get involved? You can get involved in any way possible to get the government working on your behalf, not their behalf. The silent majority has to be awakened. To be silent means you're status quo and you're willing to accept what is happening. I can tell you with certainty the following. The country is on a fast track towards becoming a socialist European nation. But we can stop that. We can stop that. All of you know the legislation the current administration is proposing. Nationalize health care, cap and trade, card check, and on and on and on. The U.S. Constitution is ignored on a daily basis. This president has gotten us in a national debt that we may never be able to recover from in just 6 short months. I'm hoping what I've said today will motivate you to take action and get the world out, because the republic that we love so dearly will not continue to exist if things continue to be the way they are. You can talk about all of this to your neighbors, your friends, your relatives, your church, people at schools. You can talk to anybody who will listen to you. You've got to make an effort. The time to get involved and take action is right now. All of you can make a difference. I'm trying to make a difference. Together we can turn the horrible direction this country's going. I thank you all for listening. God bless all of you, and God bless the United States.